Now, I'm going to be particularly honest. This episode is going to feature quite a bit of advice that's going to be shared one way or another, but essentially it does revolve around the men. And on one side, you're busy trying to tell a man to not be stupid. On some other sides, it's mostly about the kind of man that you're supposed to try and be, the kind of man that you're expected to be by women, and the kind of women that you, the man, are supposed to supposedly like or, take to settle down with. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit because that is going to come after we discuss a little bit of shit first. So as we work ourselves towards that particular area, there's something particularly shocking that I found out very recently that I just want to read for you guys for a little bit. And it's not a fun fact and it doesn't come from Kenya or even Africa, it's from Japan. It's actually from Japan. And I'm going to read it for you. So it says, and I quote, "The cabinet on Tuesday approved a bill to recognize sexual violations even in the absence of physical violence or coercion and raise the age of sexual consent from 13 to 16 years old as part of the reforms to the country's penal code." Now, this quote was actually taken from a Japan Times website on the 14th of March 2023. So, in other words, you're telling me that the age of consent in Japan up until just recently was 13 years old? 13? You're telling me R. Kelly would have been better off in Japan? Because you think about it, what's the one thing that's brought the guy down? It's this whole story of pedophilia. That's why people are asking for him to be cancelled. His music should be removed from Spotify and Apple and shit. And people have had an entire brouhaha about the entire thing, constantly arguing over the fact that R. Kelly shouldn't be listened to because the guy did some shit to a bunch of little girls. And you're telling me that this guy wouldn't have really caused much news for it if he was in Japan? Come on, bruh. Okay, I'm not saying that whatever the hell that he was doing was right. It's just that when you think about him right now, it's not like he has that many rhinos that are 13 years old in a men's prison. At least as far as my knowledge on men's prisons in the US is concerned. But you think about it, interestingly enough, when I was reading this, I actually decided to just Google the ages of consent in certain places. And I kid you the hell not, this actually showed me that the age of consent isn't 18 everywhere. It's actually varied in very many different places. And some of these countries, you didn't even expect that they'd have that. So, according to theguardian.com, the age of consent is 16 years old in Great Britain, aka the UK, aka England. In South Korea, it is also the same as Great Britain at 16 years old. In France, it is 15 years old. And in Germany and China, the age of consent is 14 years old. There's a bunch of niggas that look at high school babes and they're like, wait until she's 18. If they were in any of these countries looking at babes like that, they'd literally just go and hit on them and no one would give too much of a damn. How the fuck does the world function like this? And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the age of consent should be higher or lower. I don't know what cultures and countries usually use to decide this sort of shit. I'm just saying that in some places, you might find that someone who is called a pedophile isn't really a pedophile. And in others, some places where someone might not think that they're pedophiles, probably because they came from a country like China, might be looked at as pedophiles. But either way, this is a very interesting thing. Because when you think about it, if R. Kelly actually knew about this shit, he'd have moved to Japan quite a lot earlier. And I believe I Can Fly would have probably come out as an anime music video than, that regular thing that people that are all trying to be gospel-y were sort of doing. But anyways, all that said and done, I don't sound like I am pro-pedophile, so I am going to leave it at that, because this podcast does not specialize in discussing children, and move it along to something that requires maturity. But first, we must say, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who is looking at all of this consent talk as childish. Because if I have to ask what age you are before I can shag you, then you're probably a child. He is a man whose favorite cardio involves skipping leg day. It is none other than your tall, dark and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Tweet Street, the show where we take a deep dive into Twitter, pull up a couple of tweets and break them down a little bit. Now, as usual, if you know the drill, you can repeat it after me. If you don't know the drill, it's okay. And if you know the drill, it's cool, because I usually like to repeat it either way. and it relates to how it is that you can contribute to the making of these episodes via submitting the many tweets that you feel we should discuss. And it's a very simple drill, and it almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly on Facebook or on IG. If it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, or it even happened to make it as a reel, then the place to send it to is @Breaktime on Westside on Facebook or on IG. The DMs are always open, and I would be more than happy to take it from there and handle it accordingly. Now, we have a bunch of tweets that are surrounding men that I need to get to, but before I do that, we need to discuss a very interesting celebrity that did some very stupid shit. Now, normally, some people that might be a little bit misogynistic might be thinking that I'm about to highlight a babe, and I'm about to say you're right, but no, you're not. You're actually wrong. This is actually a dude. It's a dude that's known for playing a very stupid character, and it seems like he decided to bring his stupidity off screen to the real life, and the man that I am speaking about is none other than Tyrese. Now, Tyrese, the actor Tyrese, formerly a singer Tyrese, was ordered by the judge to pay $237,000 to his ex-wife and almost $400,000 to her attorney in a child custody case that he has been fighting with very recently. Now, all of this comes after he had earlier called the judge racist. And you honestly didn't expect that you'd have some shit thrown at you? Like, come on, bruh. We already know that the justice system can sometimes deal men a very bad hand, but you just had to poke the bear, didn't you? Huh. But anyways, let me just read the story so that at least we can get a full context of whatever the hell happened. So the story reads, and I quote, "The judge Tyrese publicly called out before his child custody hearing is ordering him to fork over nearly $250,000 to his ex-wife and almost $400,000 to her attorney. The actor-singer was in Fulton County Court on Tuesday to deal with his ongoing child support battle with Samantha Lee Gibson, the main issue being Tyrese refusing to pay the $10,000 a month he was ordered to pay last August because he felt the judge was quote-unquote racist and biased against him. Also, he stated on the stand today Tyrese feels the $10,000 a month is excessive. He claims Samantha doesn't need that much because she makes good money on her own. In the end, Tyrese was ordered to pay a total of $237,944 in back child support for their daughter Soraya and $399,000 for Samantha's attorney fees. He also has to foot a $17,000 bill for the special master, a referee of sorts, appointed by the judge to handle minor disputes during the case." End quote. Okay, now considering that this guy went out to call the judge racist and biased against him, do you really think that this could have gone any better? In my opinion, because if you decide to call him racist, or if you decide to call her racist or biased, like, would you really think that this shit was going to get any better? Especially considering that if you've ever met a judge, like, those guys tend to have a bit of an ego. There's not that many of them that are like, oh, you know, I'm gonna be nice about this shit. No, judges tend to have ego for days. And you have the nerve to get out, even though it's on social media, to call the judge racist. Like, what the fuck? Like, don't people actually know that to solve most of the world's problems, that shit is usually handled in a back room somewhere? Like, this whole shit of going out and like ranting and making noise online usually barely ever does shit. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it's completely useless. It's just most of the change that happens in people's lives, most of the changes that happens in tons of people's lives usually happens as a result of backroom dealings, as a result of silent efforts made. The shit that people don't usually see out here, that's the shit that makes a change. But you decide to take your rants and your problems with someone and send them outside? Like, what exactly did you think was going to happen? You know? Some of this shit I think some people need to understand and just simply remember the fact that a lot of the things that happened in their world, or even for them to exist, required a little bit of backroom dealings. if you look at, the negotiations for your school fees, it's not like they were done publicly, they were done in private. If you're trying to work and get like a salary raise, it's not something that'll be done in public, it's something that'll be negotiated in private. But then again, I guess since Guy already made his problem a lot worse, there's nothing much that I can really say about it besides I just hope the guy has the money, and leave it at that because we have a bunch of tweets to handle. So let's move it on to our very first tweet of this episode. Gym guys are eating your girls because they have the body and physique your girls are attracted to. It is deep rooted in biology. How about dedicating 2 hours every day in the gym and start working on those small arms and chests you have instead of crying online? Or you can remain the way you are and get a girl who will love you anyway, but trust me, every time a well-built guy passes by, she will turn. Okay, first of all, considering that this is a babe who wrote this, I can't exactly endorse whatever the hell she's saying, even though this is a babe thing and it's been said by a babe. I actually can't agree with it because, first of all, from all the babes that I've spoken to, of which I don't think they're all the same kind, they're not particularly attracted to super muscular dudes. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like they don't want a guy that takes care of themselves. They actually do want a guy that will take care of themselves on a physical level and, isn't, either too fat or too skinny in quite a number of cases. But the muscular dude, the gym rat, those ones don't appeal to that many babes. Like, they're never really the kind of dude that a lot of babes will rank in, like, priority number one in terms of the kind of body that they want. And I can remember a bit of a while back, I actually did an episode on roughly about the same thing when I was busy looking at whether you being more muscular makes you a much better option for a lot of babes. And it actually went around some statistics I had looked into, and according to the stats, it actually states that muscular men, like the really muscular young dudes, actually look good and they will appeal to a lot of women, but only appeal to women for short-term mating reasons. When it comes to something a little bit more long-term, women tend to prefer someone who's a little bit chubby or maybe a little bit skinny. But you being super muscular is something that they're actually not entirely into. And people have given all sorts of reasons for this. Some people say that because she's supposed to be the good looking one, you looking better than her in some way will sort of make them insecure because they might also need to work out to lose a bunch of belly fat and shit, and that might sort of turn them off. Some other people have spoken about how such a person is very hard to maintain, whether or not they're doing it themselves. Just the fact that they have to go and work out all the time and they're very into themselves can actually turn off a woman. Some other people have spoken about how it seems a bit more feminine that someone is paying a lot of attention to their physical looks as opposed to, focusing on other things, because physical looks is mostly a girl's thing to usually sort of center their attention on. And some people have said that just being chubbier works out because you're sort of like a softer cushion, you're a little bit more comfortable. And that's a nice thing, and you don't take yourself too seriously, which is also a nice thing, and it also helps them not take themselves too seriously, which is a nice thing. But all in all, the gym rat, the super muscular guy, you don't have to worry about that sort of person. Now, of course, if this is supposed to give you motivation to go to the gym, personally, I'll tell you that this is bullshit motivation. If you want to go to the gym for your reasons, whether it's to improve your physical health, whether it's to have a body that you would enjoy looking at in front of the mirror, whether it's you doing it so that you can increase endurance or make yourself more athletic, whatever reason it is, as long as it's entirely centered on you, it's probably the most important one. But if you're doing it because you're trying to get or retain a babe, once you realize that it's a lot less to do with that, and it probably even has more to do with your resourcefulness, you probably won't stay in the gym very long. But I will leave it at that and move things on. So on to our very next tweet, and this isn't your typical tweet that I'm gonna read out. This one's actually a video that someone posted up on Twitter that I feel just needs to be discussed, and I feel like it was just too short to put on a rant. But either way, I'm gonna have the video here, so here it is.
When they say pay attention to the kind of woman a man has dated before you, you need to take it seriously, because you can really, really tell how they're going to treat you. When her man has been with women that are bums, bitches that they don't even get their hair done. They do their own hair. Like, not saying doing your own hair is bad. If you can't do hair and you're doing your own hair, then that says a lot. But you can really, really tell if these men can afford you or they can afford to be with you, because men like high maintenance women. But can they maintain? Can they maintain? That is the question. Can they actually maintain? Because you want to go for these girls, but when these girls are asking you to, pay for their nails, you're like, your nails are beautiful just the way it is. But you know that I like to get my nails done. You know I like to get my hair done. You know I like to get my lashes done. So why did you come for me when you know you cannot afford me? Like...
Okay. So... I'm gonna read actually the comment that got me onto this tweet, which was someone who commented and said, and I quote, "I've clocked fat women set stupid standards to make them feel better about not having any niggas." Of which, yes, the babe does look like she is particularly big, but I'm not even going to talk about this shit like, this is a fat babe, blah, blah, blah. I'm just gonna address it for what it is, because, this is a sack of bullshit. And I'm not saying this to take a dump on her preferences or anything. This is just a sack of bullshit, just mainly off of one main thing. There's this thing where she said, men like high maintenance women, but can you really afford to maintain such a woman? Look, here's the thing. My number one issue is, who the fuck told you that men in general like high maintenance women? Because that is probably some of the most misleading horseshit that I have ever heard. I have never heard a guy saying that he wants a high maintenance babe. Some guys might say that they want a baddie, others might say that they want a babe that every dude wants, but I have never heard a man say that they want a high maintenance babe. So whatever the fuck it is that you're saying over there is absolute garbage. Okay? Then the other thing is, when you kind of looking at someone's past, okay, that one I totally agree with. Looking at the person you want to be with's past does make sense, because you get to learn stuff about the person. But concluding that you need to be treated a certain way because this is a dude is a little bit misleading to other babes as well. Because I think the pleasure of having someone pay for your nails, having someone pay for your hair, having someone treat you out and be generous is something that should be given as a privilege, is something that should be given as an act of service or as an act of love for the partner that you are trying to be with or you currently are with. But saying that this is something that you're supposed to expect, I think is probably very, very misleading. So at the end of the day, I have two issues with this entire thing. One, the fact that you are taking generosity and you're slapping a bunch of entitlement onto it. Secondly, but most importantly, the fact that you think that men like high maintenance women. Because to be very honest, I can only think of two sets of people that like high maintenance women. One, rich people who are lonely because they don't mind fake love because it's the closest thing to love that they're getting. And rich guys that very, very well know that they can get some very quick pussy from a babe like you. Because if you want to be a high maintenance babe and you'll be attracted to dudes with money, then guess what? A bunch of niggas splash a bit of money on you here and there, and you might just spread those cheeks. And guess what? He'll do it the first time, he might not do it the second or the third time, or he might gradually do less, but guess what? Because you know that this guy is a dude with means, you'll want to nail him down. So you'll probably lie to yourself that if you ride his dick a little bit better, if you throw it back a little bit more, then this man will probably want to wife you or some shit, or he'll definitely catch feelings for you. To which I will tell you, that shit won't happen, and the moment you start to pull back or the moment he gets tired of you, he will just drop you and he will go and get another high maintenance babe to spoil and fuck like that. So at the end of the day, it really doesn't go to help anyone that you're talking about a high maintenance dude, yet high maintenance dudes don't particularly want girls like you long term. But anyways, maybe I'm just making too much noise and I'm talking like a broke dude. So I'm gonna leave it at that and I'm gonna move it on because we have more shit to handle and take it to our very final tweet of this episode. Men, don't marry women with more than 2 body counts. A woman with several body counts is numb. Her sexual polarity is as cold as a stone. She will need an electric dildo to jumpstart her sexual tension. She cannot sit in one relationship. Okay, so I can go to the whole sitting in one relationship thing and argue that out, and I can say that's probably the most debatable thing here. But honestly, is it just me, or does this guy sound like he's still in the 70s and the 80s? Because let's be particularly honest, the chances of you finding a babe with a body count that is anywhere less than 5 right now, and you are trying to settle down and you are above the age of 25, looking for someone who is even above the age of 25 is a lot closer to zero than some of the dudes that follow this guy usually think. Because here's the first thing. When you think about it, and this is something that I think more and more people should actually try and conceptualize in their minds, a lot of these babes pretty much started having sex, say, at the age of 18 or 19. It could have even been before, but let's assume they started right at the age where consent fell squarely on them, around 18, 19. And let's assume that it's their first boyfriend. They go with that boyfriend, they stay with him for, say, probably 2 or 3 years. Let's call it 2 years. So they have pretty much had one sexual partner and they're 20 years old. Between that partner and the other one, let's say she has probably about 6 months to a year where she's busy trying it out with different dudes, all without getting into any real commitment. Because a lot of these guys are like, oh, I don't know if I'm really ready to get into a relationship. And some of them just gave her the impression that, you know, they want to settle down with her in some way, or at least they want to commit. But dude wanted to just get some pussy and move on. A lot of these guys didn't know how to hit on babes, or don't know how to hit on babes. A bunch of these guys are in uni and sex is all around, and guys are just trying to have sex because they can. Alright? So let's assume that while they're doing that, actually assuming that that happens for, say, about a year, maybe even 2 years. She's 22 years old. She pretty much gets another guy, ends up dating them for, say, probably about a year and a half. Dude probably cheats, shorty gets pissed off, gets out of the relationship. She decides that she no longer wants to be this guy. Let's assume she shags a bestie or some other guy that she was sort of having a thing with. At the end of this, she is barely even 25 years old, alright? She's barely even 24, if I'm not wrong. And she already has a body count of, say, probably 5. And you're telling me that a woman should have less than a body count of 2. Like, come on, bruh. Are you really being realistic here? Because I haven't even included shit like the whole face. Like, come on, bruh. And that number in and of itself has already gone past 2 very quickly. But you want to know the most interesting part about all of this? No matter how much we can argue about the whole body counts thing, how many sexual partners the woman has had, and what it does to her sexual polarity. At the end of the day, even though you say that you want a woman with a body count of 2 or 5 or 0 or anything, if she decides that she's not going to tell you the truth, there's a pretty good chance that you won't find out if she's screwed other people. Like, let's be particularly honest. She could have had a body count of 40 but she'll tell you 4. She could have had a body count of 15 but she'll tell you 5 or even 3. But you'll never really be able to verify if it's beyond that 3 in quite a number of the cases. So why exactly are you stressing on the number being 2 or less? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that the body count isn't useful or it's not important. It's just that it's mostly important to us as men, and not necessarily because it affects the ability to be a good mother or possibly even a good partner to a degree. Because when I think about the importance of a woman's body count to me, as Denver, I think about it in the level of safety and loyalty. Because if she has been screwing around with a bunch of different dudes, I don't know how many dudes she's banged raw, so I don't know if she's picked up any diseases, and so I can't entirely be sure about that. And if she's shagged more dudes, then the chances of her getting more diseases has increased dramatically. As well as shit like abortions, which can affect her ability to have kids later on if the procedures that were done weren't particularly good. Then also, I have to look at the loyalty side of it, because in how many of those relationships that she's been in has she gotten to a point where shit went sideways and she decided to start screwing around? Because if such a thing's happened, what's to tell me that she won't do the same thing with us? Because I'm not going to say that everything is going to be 100% randy dandy between the both of us. Sometimes we might go through a bunch of shit. Sometimes we're gonna have tough times between the both of us. So how can I be sure that the babe won't start fucking around because she's clearly tired of the relationship, or she seems supposedly interested in someone else? Like, those are my concerns and why I would put emphasis on a woman's body count. Although at the same time, those are just my thoughts on it, so I'd want yours because, maybe we don't entirely agree on this and maybe there's other reasons, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On Twitter, it is at BagakaTheD. On Facebook and on IG, it is at Breaktime on my side. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.